Hi, kids.
Hi!
We're here to say hello and do a little reminiscing. For me, possibly one of the earliest things that I can remember is, of course, living in the home on Odyssey Street there. And it had to do a lot with being right during the same era and the same time as the Second World War. And a lot of the things that happened during that, uh, like I can remember when Uncle Bud and Uncle Dick were my two brothers that were in the Army. And when they would come home, it was normally that they hitchhiked all the way from wherever the camp was at. Uncle Bud in Wisconsin and Uncle Dick in, oh, I can't even think of where he was at now. But when they came home, they didn't have a car, so they hitchhiked all the way home. And I can remember a car pulling up in front of the home there at Odyssey Street. There was always a place there that you could kind of like pull off to the edge of the road there, and cars could sit there or they could park there for a little time. And I remember this one time that a car come up like that, they pulled like that, and I went to the dining room door window and I looked out and I seen Uncle Bud crawling out of the back of the car that was stopped in front. And I can remember running back through the house and finding Mama. And I said, Mama, Mama, Uncle Bud's home, Uncle Bud's home. Or not Uncle Bud, but Bud's home, Bud's home. And just about that time he comes walking through the front door. And them were just so easy times to remember. A couple other times I can remember times that Uncle Dick came home the same way, always hitchhiking. Because until Uncle Dick was hurt in the war and he had to be in a hospital in Fort Clinton, in an Army hospital. When he was there, he had a car that he could drive. So he could drive home almost every weekend. But of course, when he is over in France and before he was injured and even for quite a while afterwards, he couldn't come home at all.
Well, as far as I can remember in that area were the blackouts, where they would be practice blackouts, so you hear the siren, you had to turn off all your lights, or if you had dark, deep shades, you could pull those down and say like one room, a dim one, so that you weren't totally dark. And I don't remember it happening, I just remember reading about it, because I would have been only 6, I don't know why I don't remember it, but Grandma went into labor for Frankie on a blackout night. And they got stopped. The first time she had a baby in the hospital, #1, but they had it out and they got stopped like about 3 times on the way to the hospital because they shouldn't have been on the roads, you know, accordingly. But they just let them go on till she made it in time. I don't remember that we had anybody that we had to worry about that was in the war at that time, because my brother Don was just, you know, like 10 or 11 at that time, and I don't think we had any but in it that I recall.
One of the other things that I remember possibly the most vividly of anything about the war is when airplanes would go over. It seemed like they always had this pattern that they went over like just to the north of us. And every time, and it was always going the same way, always going west. They never come either, always going west. So they must have had, like I'm sure them same planes possibly come back, some of them at sometimes, but they must have had a different air pattern that there's maybe 20 miles or 40 miles away. But when there was going west, the biggest roar you would ever hear. And you was never afraid because they was all United States planes. They had the big star on them and B-52 bombers. And there would be 150, 200 of them. I mean, just gobs of them. And when they went over, and you stop and think of how much noise one of them planes make, and then you put 100 of them planes with that noise, it's just deafening. You didn't hear nothing else at that time.
Yeah, I remember hearing those too. But like I said, I don't remember ever feeling afraid because of the war. I was just little enough that you didn't have TV. And if we sat down to listen to the radio, or we always woke up every Saturday to the radio, let's pretend. So I didn't get too much of the war stuff.
It was neat to go to a movie during that time, because the reason it was neat is because they always had at one of them movies a newsreel time, and them newsreels were almost always about the war. You didn't have television to be able to watch television. So, anything that come on the screen was big news. And stuff that, if you had television, it would be on tonight. We maybe didn't see it for 6 weeks until it was finally on tape to show that way. But I don't think I ever was really afraid. I was afraid of going to war.
I remember running down the street, waving my hands. The war is over, the war is over. I remember on Marl Road there, out in the country a little bit, but I do remember that. I also remember sitting on the porch on Marl Road. By the way, the number of the street, our house was 5445. That 445 has come up a lot of times in my life, but I think that must be 445. One of our phone numbers was that, but anyway. I remember sitting on the porch.
Your house number is that?
Yeah. We had a rain and it flooded a lot in that times when you evidently didn't have the sewers and stuff like you do now. But sitting up with my feet up on the porch because the whole streets and everything were flooded. Now, if it was summer, we had to go play in it. Kids don't even think about playing in a mud puddle anymore, but boy, we had a lot of fun in mud puddles, didn't we?
Yeah.
I remember my sister getting mad at me so many times when she wanted to go with her friends, and I wanted to go with her, and she didn't want me to go with her, and I'd start crying, and Mom would say, "Let her go, let her go." So eventually, if I cried hard enough, I got to go, but once in a while Mom would say, "No, let him go." I remember that age time too, where I had twins that were down the street, the Shaffer twins, Darlene and Dolores, and hardly anybody could tell them apart, but I could. And they had a mulberry bush, and it was, probably, I would say, maybe 8 feet high, but the leaves all came down, clear down to the ground. So we'd crawl in there and we'd play house in there. But our moms weren't real happy because you know what happens when you're in a mulberry bush? You get mulberry stains on your clothes. They also had a big tree in their side yard they had, and We played over there a lot and swing on the tree and spent a lot of time with the twins. We didn't get spanked very often, but if we did, it was my dad, was with his hand, and he's a big man. And he let me go bowling with him one night to watch him bowl. And I don't remember what I did, but I do remember I got a spanking. And every time I got a spanking, I peed my pants. So there I am at the bowling alley, wet pants. And I was probably 6 or 7.
Possibly the funniest thing that ever happened to me would be when I was possibly 4 or 5. I and a friend of mine, Dick Shippey, who lived just down the street, we were playing back of our barn. And back of that barn was a drum that was possibly about 2/3 full of black tar left over from some work that Dad had been doing. And Shippy and I was playing back there, and all of a sudden he says, I hated to be dared to do something, to not do it. And he says, how dare you to dunk your head in that barrel of tar? You don't misdare me. So I walked over, crawled up on top of a bucket that I could reach it, and dipped my head down in, and I was in the tar. And I can remember being in the bathtub and Grandma washing the tar out of my head with turpentine. She said my hair was really black before that. That kind of toned it down a lot.
Something that you guys never knew, I don't know, maybe you did when you were little. But I remember walking to school and of course she had a dress on then, and my saddle shoes and socks. And the only thing different is that if your socks got holes in them, you didn't just throw them away. And if your socks got holes in them and you didn't get them to Grandma to fix them, then you had to pull them down in your shoes behind on the bottom of your feet, either your toes or your heels, so that the holes didn't show.
Oh yeah, I can remember having holes in my socks. You don't see kids today with holes in their socks.
No, that's what I said, they don't.
But why? Well, I mean, they could be a brand new pair and the next day you'd have holes in them.
They're made different.
I think the reason possibly is because at that time, our shoes would normally have about a hole that big around in the bottom of them.
Oh, no, I didn't have to wear them that long, but I had to wear the same ugly shoes, unless I got lucky to get saddle shoes, brown like a boy's shoes. And I remember my dad getting mad at me because I complained about that. It wasn't.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame you. I'd hate to have to wear always brown shoes.
They were boys' shoes though, they weren't.
Yeah,
anything
that's what I
looked
mean,
female.
that's what I mean.
Yeah. Would you like to wear girls' shoes?
No, that's what I'm saying.
I think you're making fun of me.
No, I am not. I am not. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
That's like me wearing corduroys.
Oh, your knickers. So
Knickers.
You love that. You love
corduroy
them.
knickers. Oh, I hated them. Oh my God, with a passion.